Hello and welcome to Game Design Hour. I'm your host, Miles Goldsmith. On each episode of Game Design Hour, I interview the people who create the video games you know and love. On today's episode, I'm interviewing two of the people behind Fika Productions' game, Ship of Fools. Ship of Fools is a roguelike co-op game where you're making your way across the sea and into a storm, battling different creatures along the way. Without any further ado, let's get into the interview.
My name is Antoine Grégoire-Slide. I'm the lead game designer on Ship of Fools. And I'm also doing a bit of project managing also for the game.
Yes, and I'm Daniel Carmichael. I'm the lead gameplay developer on Ship of Fools. And I'm also one of the co-founders of Fika Productions, as well as Antoine.
Yeah, I was missing that part as well.
So for both of you, what was the first thing that really sparked your interest in creating video games?
I think first, we've been baiting in video games since we were really young. I speak for myself, but I think I started playing video game at the age of 5 or 6. And it's always been a passion for me. And as I grew up and started choosing where I will work next, I've been in computer science, software engineering, because it feels like a way to get close to creating those awesome video games. And the more we were doing it, the more we started thinking like we should found our own studio and doing our own game, work together. And this is why we are there. So we really started the company directly after we graduate from university. So we didn't have any work experience in big AAA studio before. It was just like, we want to do video game. We want to work together. And that was the start of Fika.
And for me, my interest in creating video games is quite an interesting story. I think, as you can see, I'm a disabled guy. I'm in a wheelchair, and I had quite a big accident in my childhood that made me paraplegic, and I had quite a big time in the hospital. And when I was in hospital in rehab, I had this interesting story with one of my roommates, and a video game was a big part of what brought us together. I think video game can have a very big positive impact on people. And the accident I have made me a paraplegic, and the other guy, he was all burnt completely. His face was completely burned. So we both have a big accident, and we played video games all day. And that made me realize that video games is a way to bring people together, even though their circumstances are way harder than you can imagine. I wanted in my life to make a way to bring people together in my own creations. So this impact that video game had on my life, I want to create it for other people. So, yeah, that's a bit of my story.
How did the idea for Ship of Fools originate?
Yeah, the idea for Ship of Fools originate from many places. At first, we were doing like a game about squirrels running in the woods. It was more like a multiplayer brawling game more than a co-op game. And the more we developed it and we learned about what we are able to do as a team, the more we were looking for, maybe it could be nice if it's like a co-op adventure game. We were really fans of roguelite, and we noticed also in the market that not a lot of roguelikes are doing the co-op in a good way. Sometimes it feels a bit tacked on, and clearly those games are designed to be single player, and the multiplayer is like, oh, it's feasible adding another player to the game. So we will adapt a bit the rules of the game to do that, but normally create a lesser experience in those kind of games than when it's started from the beginning as a co-op game. And with Ship of Fools, that was the initial spark. So, okay, we are going to do this in co-op because we see that there's a missing piece in the market for that kind of game. So we feel like, yeah, it could be really nice to develop that game. And the squirrels became like some different animals with some passes from our art direction. And at some point, we just had the idea like, Yeah, it's co-op. We love the feeling of playing co-op in Halo. Like one is a shooter, the other one is the driver. So in a Warthog. So we just decide like, okay, what if it's in a boat? And from that point, the squirrels became like sea creatures, a bit anthropomorphic, and everything was coming together at that point. Like, okay, it's really gonna be a nautical adventure where the boat is your life that you need to protect and not your own person. And that was the start of Ship of Fools.
Me and Antoine, we also lived the golden age of couch co-op games when we were in university studying together. And we remember we were always downloading a bunch of shitty games on our PC to play at night. And
there was good games also, not just shitty games, but there was a lot of different games that we tried.
I think it was the golden age of couch co-op games with Overcooked being released and games like what was the name of the game with we played the little narvals with horns. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I don't remember the name of that game, but it was fun. You need to pierce the art of the other narvals. Yeah.
We played many couch games versus or co-op, and we wanted to bring that unraveling aspect of these kind of games to the roguelike genre in a co-op aspect that was missing from the market, as Antoine said. And yeah, we did many prototypes and many things we trashed in the bin. I was doing prototypes with Etienne at first on the Ship of Fools. Etienne is one of our co-founder, and Etienne is more of an artist. I'm more of a dev. So it was only me and Etienne in a room like for a month, and we've developed the prototype for Squirrels, and we also had this cool co-op idea. It was a versus idea. It was a ninja game where your character was invisible on the screen when you don't move, and it was a really bad idea, but it kind of worked. But we did many prototypes, and someday Ship of Fools was born from great brainstorms and ideas. So yeah.
What drew you all specifically to the genre of roguelikes for this game?
I think I was the biggest fan of roguelikes amongst the team. I've played like The Binding of Isaac in its first iteration, like the old Flash Binding of Isaac game. From the start, I was hooked when I was really young on that game. And also in this kind of a golden age of co-op games, there was many roguelikes that were being released, and we played a lot of them. We saw that roguelikes was kind of a good starting point for an indie studio because it's a genre of games where you don't have to have a big production to have a game that can last. If you see what I mean, you can play the same game, and it's always different and interesting each time. So it was kind of a good starting point for a small studio like us. So we saw that it was a great market, but we wanted to include co-op in it. And when we looked for co-op roguelike games, we were really disappointed to see that often really good games such as Risk of Rain. I really love Risk of Rain 2, but the co-op experience in that kind of games is pretty boring, where you both have a single player experience in the same game. So we wanted to have a co-op experience in the roguelike genre, and that's where Ship of Fools was born.
As you said, pretty much every game has different interesting ideas that were cut. What were some of those ideas that you liked but just didn't fit into the final product of the game?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, but I think the first one I can think of, because it was something that was really from the beginning of the game. I don't know. I have two in mind, but I think one of the first one was combat on the island. I think we will really like to add that features, and I think it's something that could be cool to bring to Ship of Fools, or in maybe a Ship of Fools 2 someday. But with all the system that we have worked in place, you only take damage when your ship is damaged. So it was a bit hard to find like, okay, what about there's enemy on the island, but they want to reach your ship? So it's more like a tower defense instead of like brawling, or will they steal things for you? Is it fun to have things steal from you in a roguelite? So there was all of that. And because the production timeline was also a bit tight and we needed to focus on the core aspect of the game, we just decided to left aside the combat on island and exploration. But it's something that we hold dear to our hearts. And if we were to make a second game, I think it will be like, how can we make this possible for a Ship of Fools?
Another cool idea that we decided to cut in the early version of Ship of Fools, there were a captain on the boat, and you were playing your fools, and there was some NPC on the boat that was the captain. And that guy would give you like orders and you had to complete them. And the boat didn't have a life bar. It was the satisfaction of the captain that was your life. And at any moment, the captain could say like, oh, you need to wash the boat. And then some tiles on the boat became dirty and you had to scrub them. I don't know if it's public somewhere, but in some early concept arts of Ship of Fools, there was this captain character that appeared in some key arts. I don't know if it's still available, Antoine.
It's available only in our archives, but yeah, we have that somewhere.
But I think when we did Catapult contest, we had this key art with the captain on the boat, if I remember.
Maybe it's been a long time since.
If you search enough the web, you might find something.
Managing scope while working on a video game is really important so that you don't spend too long working on ideas that might not work. And it's important to like cut down and keep the game at a manageable size. How did you work to manage your scope while working on Ship of Fools?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think it's one of the hardest part of delivering a final project is managing scope, because along the production process, we have so many great ideas that are sometimes coming out like 2 months before the release. But no, we need to focus on finishing the game and not adding new content, possibly new bugs to the game. So I think you need to delegate someone in your team that is more responsible of managing the scope of the game. So a producer. We work with agile methodology. So we work in sprints. So we were in team setting the goals for the sprint, what features we want to accomplish, and how many sprints we need to get there. By working also with a publisher, they have also a producer on their side, and we were setting together some milestone to accomplish. So each milestone are bringing a new big chunk of the game. So we know that, yeah, if each milestone is a big sector with a boss, we know that if we accomplish one milestone in like 3 to 4 months, if we can do that 4 times, we have 4 sectors, 4 boss in the games, and pretty much like the once we have the base mechanics and things like that, we have a project that can be released. So once you agree to that, you need like to make sure that you stay in track. And sometimes there are new ideas that like, yeah, we're going to do that, but something else needs to go away if we are adding that to our schedule. So it's really a hard task to do, and sometimes heartbreaking, because there's cool things that you want to do, but it's not sometimes possible. It's just not possible to do them all. So you have to keep things for later, for updates, DLCs, new games, and accept that you need to deliver that game someday.
It's really hard to be a game designer and a producer at the same time, and that was one of the challenges we faced in Ship of Fools. Was to manage our timelines while having ideas at the same time. It's really heartbreaking to cut stuff that we put our heart in to design. So yeah.
What was your process for playtesting Ship of Fools, and what sort of important information did you learn from playtesting?
There's something really nice for playtesting that we had access during the production. We have participated in some contests in our city, And one of them gave us access to Ubisoft testing lab. So it was really nice to have real player testing our games and having like full reports on what they have achieved in the game and where they are stuck and things like that. So that was really good way to play test the games. And our publisher, Team 17, has also the same kind of lab. So we were able to combine like a lot of playtest sessions, usability sessions, to be able to gather feedbacks from table from the players that have just tried the game and look at what we can do to improve the game according to that feedback. So that was our main feedback loop, and the rest was coming from teams of QA, and also internally we were playtesting the game often to just see like, is it feasible? Is it fun? But sometimes we are not the best to judge our own work because we become quickly too good at our own games. So sometimes things that we find like really too easy for newcomers, it's really hard. So striking that balance of difficulty in the game was a great challenge because we are not the best to play test our own game. So it's hard for that.
And those usability sessions were really interesting for us because they made us realize how much bad we were at making a tutorial because the tutorial, we had so many iterations on it to communicate the right information and to communicate how to play Ship of Fools to player. It's really hard, like Antoine said, when you're really good at your own game, to make someone else understand how to play it. So each time we did a usability session, the tutorial would improve a lot, and we would see like every player get stuck at the same place at the same time. So we need to do something about this. And we did an iteration. We added like tooltip with buttons and arrows to point, and you need to click on this with that button. So, and at some point, we had a tutorial that was pretty good, I think, and a player can understand the base mechanics.
What game engine did you use to create Ship of Fools, and what was your experience with using that game engine?
Yes, we were using Unity from the start. We chose Unity because it was really accessible, and also we had a course in university that taught us how to use Unity. It was a good choice, I think, for an indie studio. We faced many challenges in Unity. One of them was being that the editor at some point became really slow, and we had a lot of trouble to manage memory. So for new developers, learn how to use addressables and how to manage memory, because when you work on the same project for a lot of years, it can get cluttered and it can get messy. So a quick tip for any upcoming developer, that was one of our big struggle, and we learned many things, and in our future projects we will be well equipped to deal with these kind of issues. Yeah, Unity is a great tool to work in a team. What other problem did we face? Antoine, do you have any ideas?
Problems with Unity, I think most of the problems were, as you said, performance issues. So I think it's important to know how to do well I would say, the boring part. It's not really boring because it's cool challenge to manage memory, loading, save. But those are like the core things that every games that you will develop needs. And doing them well, I think, will save you so much time in the long run. So I say that they are the boring part because you are not creating like new gameplay, new features, stuff that you can see and play with.
Feel.
Those part that are like hidden in game development are so important. Having the right tooling also to be able to create levels quickly. And an example of that is creating new items in the game. We had system to create like the different abilities of those items really quickly, but one of the longest part to do is only like to fill up all the information about those items. And late in the production, we realized that if we had just create a tool for putting all that information at one place, and it can like create all the game object necessary to make that item work in the game automatically. That will have saved us a lot of time just by creating a tons of item in the game. So those kind of things, tasks that you feel that you will need to repeat a lot of times during production, it's good to have like that insight of, yeah, we should create a tool to do that automatically. And that will make your production a lot more smoother once you are close to reach that final line of shipping the game.
So the final boss of the game is the Eye of the Storm. What drew you to that as the final boss? And were there any other alternative final bosses that you thought about, but chose that one instead?
Yeah, so interesting story about the Eye of the Storm. We had a really, really short window of time to create that boss from beginning to end. It was the boss that took us the less time to create. So we had to think what was the way to make a boss that's quite a big of a challenge, but that does not cost us a lot of production time. So we brainstormed and we decided to go the way we did. It's a boss that spawns wave of enemies, and those enemies are like reskins of enemies you saw throughout the game, and they have tougher stats. And what's interesting is these enemies, you never see them together because they're in different sectors. So you can see like spiders with puffer fishes and scanners. I don't know if you know the name of the enemies. We don't say them in the game, but yeah. So we had to take a route that make this boss really, really easy to create, because with our publisher we had a deadline and it was a big deadline for this boss. So yeah, the Eye of the Storm, its AI and its development pattern is really easy to make, but its art cost was a bit higher because we had to reskin every enemy. But with the resources we had at this time, that was the best idea.
Yeah, and also for for creating, naming that boss, I think it just felt like naturally that a lot of our boss are named around like the part that they are. Like the Ship of Fools has really a simple world where we name things by how they look. So we have the first boss that is tentacles. After that, we have claws. After we have heads. So like, oh, it needs to be like a body part because we are in a big storm and this is create all that chaos in the game. Like, oh, we should just fight an eye and it's going to be Eye of the Storm. And like, that was it was normally those kind of ideas. Sometimes it's just like someone say that idea and are we really doing this? And it feels like for Ship of Fools, Eye of the Storm was like a good fit. And we say, yeah, this one, we will do it. And we're going to fight like a big giant eye. And something that's fun, some of the boss part that we have in the game are really done in 3D, and Eye of the Storm is part in 3D. So
it's in 2D.
Yeah, it's in 2D. It was a test in 3D. I'm sorry for that.
the only boss that's in 3D in the game, it's the first one. Yeah, and tentacles, it's mouth part. When the mouth is coming out of the water, that part is in 3D, and it's one of the only enemy in the game that's in 3D. So we really juggle with 2D and 3D in the game. Every environment part is in 3D, but every character is in 2D except the mouth of tentacles.
Yeah,
but it gives a really great feel to the game to have this one in 3D, I think.
Which parts of Ship of Fools did you have to spend the most time and effort on to get just the way you wanted it?
Really hard question. I
think the character controller, we had quite a lot of time in this part.
A lot of iterations on that.
A lot of iterations. As I said earlier, the tutorial, we added many things to it to make it work. But what was the biggest?
I think there's like a couple of pieces that took a lot of time, but one that was, I think we are pretty proud of doing, like really the way we wanted it to be, is the map system. At first in Ship of Fools, it was just like you were going to one encounter to the next without really navigating. And after that, we have done like a branching path, a bit like we saw in Slay the Spires and a couple of roguelikes, where you just choose which branch you are going to take. And sometimes those branches are merging together, so you can select your path up to that boss of a sector. But we felt like, because in Ship of Fools, you are not like controlling the ship and where it's going. By just choosing a branch on a map, feel like you were not navigating. It misses the feel of the exploration that we want to have when you play a game that is about sailing. So by creating that hexagonal maps like we see in a lot of board games, it feels like it's technically the same kind of map that we have in games like Cities Spires, but it's just like everything is interconnected. So you have the decisions to go everywhere you want. So you get that feeling of exploration. But we need to balance that, because you can take really a long time to reach the boss, and like you can go around things. So we need to create that feeling of urgency, and having the storm eating part of the map, and you need to go around that and decide, oh, we want to reach that island. So are we going directly to that island, or we try to have a little more a slower game before we reach that boss? So creating that agency of what we are going to do, but it's technically possible to do everything on that map. So you can really reach any destination that you want. You just need to decide where you will not be able to go just because you took some decisions, but it still gives that feeling of exploration, because you can go everywhere you want when you open that map. So I think we really nailed that feel. And I think that's one of the part, like, was it the longest part to develop? Maybe not, but I think we are pretty proud on what we achieved to make sure that we give that exploration feeling in Ship of Fools by having the same system of going one encounter to the other. So, yeah.
Are there any small, fun details that you've added into the game that you like, but you don't see many players notice?
One of the first fun details that we added to the game was the fact that you could almost load anything inside your cannon. That was one of the quirk we wanted to bring inside Ship of Fools, was what if everything shoots differently? And one of the first thing you may or may not realize in the game is that you can actually load the wildlife animals inside your cannons. So we revealed that in the launch trailer with the fun seagull that kills shoot with her cannon. But we added a different projectile for every kind of resource in the game. Like you can shoot your planks, you can shoot your cash bags, you can even shoot your chest at enemies, and everything does something different. And that's a neat detail we wanted to include in the game. Sadly, you cannot shoot your partner. It could have been really nice to shoot your cooperator at the enemies, but that's a feature we sadly haven't time to develop.
What was the biggest challenge that you faced while working on Ship of Fools?
That's really a good question. Probably one of the biggest challenge that we had with the game is managing like the play space, because we have a ship at the center of the screen and we have enemies that goes around it, but you can only shoot in some direction, and putting a cannon, for example, in front or at the back seems like it's a bit like dead space for the game there, because it's really small. So we had to create interesting encounters with those constraints, and it sparkled a lot of our creativity to create like, how can we disturb that flow of just being like just a shooting game where there's things and you need just to shoot them before they reach your ship. And that creates that loophole. What if you need to defend your ship with something? So now the paddle mechanic was created to be able to reflect projectile and create like different kind of gameplay that we had at first that was just like shooting. And it was a great challenge to always come up with new enemies that can do things differently, but that feels well integrated in the Ship of Fools world and space. So yeah.
We wanted the player to get out of his cannon as often as possible. So enemies that could stop you from shooting it and make you do something else. And think of ways in the constrained space that we have to make the player do different actions other than shooting and walking was quite a challenge.
Yeah, we also add the harpoon and looting mechanics afterward, just to give like another objective to do. So sometimes yeah, there are enemies coming at you, but you don't want to miss that loot. So how do you communicate together to make sure that you can as well defend the ship and be able to loot the different things that are dropped in the sea by the different enemies?
Another challenge, if I can say that we had while making Ship of Fools, it's not only about making a game. It's also about making a company that works, a company that's gonna go for many years. At Fika, we really value our people, and we really want to create a work environment that's nice and to work. And we all renovated our office, and now we're 11 people in our team. As from this week, we had a new employee. So it's a first game in a new company. Bringing these two together is a really good challenge. And
sometimes we had like to manage, okay, we need to do the finance aspect of the game, of the company. Like it's the end of the year, so we need to do all the accounting, but we also need to deliver feature for the game. So like there's those parts that we need like to prioritize what is most important to be able to build that company and also be able to finish and complete that game. So sometimes it feels a bit crazy because we are not only creating a game, we are doing a lot of things to make sure that all the structures is in place to be able to create many games in the future. So doing that at the same time as developing, it's challenging.
Can fans of the game expect to see new content in the future?
That's a question that unfortunately we cannot answer yet, but we are looking currently at all the feedback that we get from the community Discord. And in our heart, we really want to do something for that game, but we are not allowed to talk about it yet.
Looking back now, is there anything you wish you could have done differently before the initial launch of the game?
It's hard to say because there's many things I would have done differently. I would have done it right from the first time, you know. And
it's easy to say.
It's easy to say. It would have saved us a lot of time. There's many features that are not in the game that we wanted to include, and we unfortunately did not have time to do. When looking back at the process, I think we really did our best. And that's what matters in the end, I think.
Yeah, I think even if there are things that now that we have knowledge about how to develop a game from start to finish, would have been done differently. But with the knowledge and the time that we had first when we were starting developing that game, I don't think we could have really done things differently. It's a big learning process, and I think even if you know like how to make games, our next game is going to be still a big learning process because there are always new things that you are learning with every project that you are doing. So I would say
that's the beauty of game dev. It's always different and we're always learning. So we cannot have it right from the start. And that's the beauty of it.
What would be your biggest piece of advice to a newer game dev trying to go and create their first game?
My piece of advice would be to start small because it's really easy to overscope and put a lot of things in the game. But it was also what we had in mind, like starting small. And finally, Ship of Fools wasn't that small, but so I think it's still a good advice too, because if you think big at first and you want to create like it, my first game is going to be an open world RPG. It's going to be awesome. You will not finish that game. So try to find a niche where I can create something that is not like too big, but there's something like in the game market that is missing there. Then I know that players will enjoy that kind of game, even if it's not like the biggest thing. So start small and make yourself good friends with people that you want to work with. I think just having the right partners to create your first game is really important because it's going to be challenging years to develop that first game, but it's going to be also really fun years if you are with the right people.
You need to finish stuff. So you need to start small to be able to finish and start something else to better yourself on the next project. So one thing I would say for new developers is try game jams. That's one thing I really, really like to do. When I started game dev, we did a lot of game jams, and it's a really great exercise to train your brain to game design something and finish it in a really, really tight deadline. There's many game jams on the itch.io that you can look around and publish your games on that. It's a really cool website to do game jams. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been great interviewing both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Miles. It was cool to be here.
And that's the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, make sure to follow and subscribe. It's different on every platform. Also, if you think a friend might like the show, make sure to share it with them. And consider giving us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you want to stay up to date with what's going on with Game Design Hour, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok at Game Design Hour. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I can see you next time.